These are the top 10 metal albums of November 2025. Part 1, consisting of albums released between the 1st and the 14th. I'm doing it this way for this month only because I wasn't able to do a new metal release video last week, and this format seems to be a little more popular. So that's the way I'm going to be doing it for now. I'm going to list 5 honorable mentions. I'll talk about them quickly, and then I'm going to count down my top 10 from 10 to 1, with number 1 being my album of the month contender for the first 2 weeks. I'll call it that. So let's get into it. I'm going to start with the honorable mentions. First one is going to be We Own the Night by the band All Sinners. This is the debut studio album, released on November 14, 2025 through Rat Pack Records. I saw a couple of other channels talk about this one. It's just a very fun and energetic heavy metal and hard rock album with lots of old school vibes. Check it out if you like some classic heavy metal. Next is With Guts and Glory by Centinex. They are a Swedish death metal band. The album is filled with old school death metal riffs and D-beats. The band also mixes in some thrash and hardcore in the mix. And this is for fans of bands like Entombed and Dismember. Next is Crypts of Eternity by Faust. This is a French melodic black metal band. It's their second full-length album. I enjoyed this one as it was black metal, but it's melodic, has some thrash and death metal influences as well. Next I have some power metal and heavy metal from the band Skull and Crossbones. The album is called Time. It's their second studio album. The album is about human nature and how people deal with the passage of time. This is some power metal with deep lyrics as opposed to the usual fantasy lyrics of a typical power metal band. The last honorable mention that just missed the top 10, as this one's really good, but the album is called The Dark Side of the Soul by The Mist. This is a Brazilian thrash metal band that I had never heard of. They formed back in 1989. It's a comeback album for them after not releasing album for many years. So if you like that Brazilian thrash sound, bands like Sepultura, check it out. Now it's time for the top 10. Coming in at number 10 is Viribus Unitis by the band 1914. They are a Ukrainian blackened death and doom band. This is their 4th studio album released on Napalm Records. This is a band that I had heard of before. I know other channels talked about them. I never listened to them before, and the album really surprised me because I wasn't expecting it, or I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did. They are labeled as black metal, but they remind me of that Greek black metal, similar to a band like Rotting Christ. The music is about war, so lyrically they're closer to a band like Sabaton, but musically it's extreme metal. It's a very dark album. It's a concept album about World War I between the years 1914 and 1919 from the perspective of a Ukrainian soldier. There's lots of little interludes and spoken word parts, and they sound like they're in Italian. And the way the album is presented is that they have the heavier death metal songs in the beginning representing the first part of the war, and then some slower doom metal songs towards the end to capture the tone of the later years of the war when there's lots of death and psychological torment and all that stuff. It's a very dark album. It's very deep. It's very bleak and very well made. I think I need to listen to this album more and listen to the band more, and also like read the lyrics and check out their other stuff. It's a really good album. Coming in at number 9 is the self-titled debut album by Your Inland Empire, also just released on November 14, 2025 through Season of Mist. This is a French band that used to be called Crown, but now they turned into this industrial dark wave post-metal band that reminded me a lot of bands like early Nine Inch Nails and other gothic industrial bands. I had this as a promo. I was able to listen to it a few times before its release, and the album is pretty good. Some of the songs are melancholic, some are more aggressive, others are more electronic and danceable. But you hear tracks like Scars, which is more melancholic, and tracks like Edge of Perfection, which are more aggressive, industrial, more like Ministry. And then there are more atmospheric stuff like I'll Be Your Night. So there's lots of different layers of sound. There's a lot of variety in this album. The band members all have these impressive resumes in the music industry as well. For example, one of the main members, David Husser, worked with Depeche Mode and Peter Gabriel, and another member, Stéphane Assam, worked with the French black gaze band Alceste. So I recommend you check out this album. And number 8 is the band Stellar Circuits with Phantom Phoenix. This is their third album. The album is divided into two halves. First part is the darker, heavier part called Phantom. The second part is the more melodic half of the album called Phoenix. It's a concept album that forms a story throughout the tracks. The band reminds me a lot of Deftones and Incubus. So if you can think of the heavier side of Deftones and the more shoegaze side of Deftones, they kind of like cover all of that, but they do it in their own way. You have tracks like Bury the Ashes, which has a very progressive alternative sound, similar to Tool. Then you have the song Elegant Illusion, which has lots of different song textures and cleaner, more melodic vocals. Kind of reminds me of White Pony era Deftones. Some of the songs are closer to extreme metal, such as I See Your Spirit. And then there's the last song on the album called The War Within, which reminded me a lot of Gojira. So it's one of those bands, they might sound a lot like their influences, but they're doing something that not a lot of other bands are doing right now, and they do it very well. So for that reason, I have this at number 8. And number 7 is Mesro with Embrace the Awakening. They are a Swedish thrash metal band that formed in 1987. They released one album in 1990, then they took a long break, released another one in 2023. This is the follow-up called Embrace the Awakening. The album was released on November 14th, 2025 through Rock of Angels Records. The band just plays straightforward thrash metal. They have an old school sound. It would sound similar to classic Metallica and some of the modern thrash bands like Evil. This is the first time I had ever listened to the band. I had never heard of them before, but I enjoyed it. It's just solid thrash. It's filled with crushing riffs, and they keep that classic sound, but they do it with a modern production, so it sounds very good, and the music is also very melodic. So there's a nice balance of that heavy thrash and the melody. And the songwriting is also there as well. There's some really great songs like Architects of the Silent War, Sleeping Cataclysm, Symphony of Twisted Souls, and many others. It's a really good thrash metal comeback considering the band formed so many years ago. So with that being said, I have it at number 7. At number 6, I have Flames with Frequency of Illusion. They are a Greek thrash metal band, and if you know me, this is one of my favorite countries for metal. They've been around for a long time. I had never heard of them. They formed in 1984. This is their 8th album. They released most of the albums in the 80s and 90s, and they made a comeback in 2022 with an album called Resurgence, and this is the follow-up to that one. The band started out as a raw speed metal band, but then over the years they evolved into more darker and extreme styles, including black, death, and thrash metal. The album was released via Sleazy Rider Records. It's a strong thrash metal album with a mix of old school influence and modern intensity. Some of the standout tracks are Hunter, Illusion, and Lightbringer, which have this old school type of thrash sound. But not everything is super dark and aggressive. There are some songs with like lighter and more humorous tones, such as the song Thrash and Beer. But overall, it's a pleasant surprise for me, as it was the first time I had ever listened to this band. At number 5, I have Astarte with Blackdemonium. This is the 6th and final studio album by the legendary Greek black metal band Astarte, recognized as the first all-female lineup in black metal. So the album was recorded between 2013 and 2014, but it was put on the shelf for over a decade because of the death of their front woman, Maria Tristesa Kolokori, back in August of 2014, and she died of leukemia. But finally, they took it, they mixed it, mastered it, and now it was released in November 2025. And this musical style is a shift from the melodic Greek black metal style of their previous albums to more of an extreme, blackened, death and thrash metal sound. You can hear lots of riffs similar to Slayer and early Sepultura, also lots of blast beats and a mix of raspy and guttural vocals. The album talks about things like spiritual warfare, ancient gods, modern chaos, fighting against death, and Tristeza's personal battle with illness. This is the last album with Tristeza's vocals. They were recorded a few months before she died, so you can really hear that angry and urgent tone in her voice. It's one of those bands, I had heard about them. Somebody recommended them a long time ago when I was doing those videos on Greek metal bands, like about a year ago. I'm glad it's finally released. Really good album. And number 4, I have Ekpyrosis by Argentine death metal band Avernal. Album was released on November 7, 2025 through Disembodied Records and Concreta Records. I had never heard of this band before, and to be honest, I don't think I've ever listened to any bands from Argentina to my knowledge. This is their 9th studio album. It contains 9 tracks with a total duration of about 34 minutes. Apparently, they are one of the pioneering death metal bands from Argentina. I watched a video from a YouTube channel called El Cuartel del Metal, and he said it was the best album of their career. This video was in Spanish, but you can watch it with those crappy YouTube AI dubbing if you want in English, but I had to put on the Spanish because I just couldn't watch the dubbing. But the reviewer praised the band's use of atmosphere and melody that was mixed into their old school death metal sound. So you have tracks like Regresión al Chaos with lots of speed and energy, well as deep guttural vocals and a dark and evil sound. There's also Logia Obscena that has this old school chugging guitar sound and lots of melodic leads. And there was Fin de los Miedos, which began with a sound bite from a movie and went on this full death metal assault, lots of speed and aggression. It was one of the best death metal albums I had heard in a while. And number 3, I have Cold Steel with Discipline and Punish. This is the debut full-length album by Tampa Bay hardcore thrash band Cold Steel, released on November 7th, 2025 through Spine Farm Records. I have been listening to a lot of hardcore recently. You'll see why when I tell you my number 1, but my top 3 are going to be all hardcore and crossover bands. The album is filled with big riffs, explosive energy, lots of time changes, and sounds that blend thrash with hardcore. The album contains 10 tracks of pure hardcore and thrash. I just found this band by chance. It was just one of those things. I was listening to Spotify, and I don't know if you listen. When you listen to Spotify, I used to free plan, and when the album ends, they start adding more songs. And this song by Cold Steel came on, and that's how I discovered it. I ended up listening to the whole album, and it's really cool. So this album has great tracks. You got the opener, No Escape, which is very melodic. It has this old school, Metallica almost thrash riff, and then there's Blacksmith of Damnation, has cool guitar harmonics, lots of thrash energy. There's Smoky Mirrors, which stands out. It has this hip-hop drum beat, the samples of Public Enemy and Chuck D and all this hardcore thrash. So that had a very 90s metal type of sound. But overall, I was surprised by this and happy I discovered it. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only. And number 2, I have Drain with Is Your Friend. This is their 3rd full-length release, released on November 7, 2025 through Epitaph Records. The album has 10 tracks that blends hardcore and thrash with high-energy, tight riffs and lots of breakdowns throughout its approximately 28-minute runtime. Opening track is called Stealing Happiness from Tomorrow with a bouncy tone. There's the old-school hardcore track, Loudest in the Room, the fast-paced Living in a Memory, and Who's Having Fun, which is a perfect song for a mosh pit. Last 2 tracks were a little slower, called Darkest Days and Until Next Time. And these songs had plenty of sludgy and melodic riffs. Songs also have an aggressive, hook-driven choruses and thrash metal riffs combined with traditional hardcore elements. Vocalist name is Sammy Chiarmietro, probably mispronouncing that. He really gives a great performance, and he does lots of freestyle-inspired lyrics that capture his experiences with the band. Moving on to my number 1. Walk the street with the rage inside of me. And number 1 is Agnostic Front with Echoes in Eternity. And this is the reason why I've been listening to a lot of hardcore. So It's the first time I had ever listened to this band. I had known about them for years. It's a fun hardcore album. It has this metallic sound. It's only 27 minutes long. Songs are catchy and memorable. I had this as a promo, so I listened to it so many times. I probably listened to it a good 8 or 9 times, like since its release. You have fun tracks like Sunday Matinee. You have heavier stuff like Turn Up the Volume. And ever since then, I've been listening to a lot of punk and hardcore, and I've been checking out all these old hardcore bands like Sick of It All and Crumbsuckers, and I've been doing this deep dive into classic punk. Like, I've been listening to a lot of Dead Kennedys a lot recently. So this album really got me into hardcore, so I'm kind of like going through this punk and hardcore phase at the moment. But walk the street with the rage inside of me. Check out my video on the best metal albums of October. Thank you for watching. Please like this video. Helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you have not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.